Hello, and thank you for joining us. We're here today to discuss safe congregations in uncertain times. My name is Bryce Klatsky, and I'll be co-presenting with my colleague Michael Goldsmith, who will talk about the second half of our slide deck today. But we're really excited to join you. Thank you for taking the time out of a busy General Assembly. We're sorry that we couldn't be there with you in person, just given the nature of our schedules, but we're glad that we are here today to be able to present to you some of what's been going on at our congregation in the hopes that some of the lessons we've learned, some of our experiences may positively impact your work and your congregation. So we are coming to you from UUFH, the fellowship in Huntington on Long Island. And you can see the map there. We're mid-island on the North Shore. This is our beautiful worship space, which is an old castle, or appears to at least be an old castle. Michael likes to joke that there is no moat, but it's kind of interesting securing a castle and a congregation of our size. And even though some of the things that we'll talk about today are particular to kind of a medium-sized congregation, hopefully some of the lessons that we've learned and some of the resources that we can share will be applicable to your setting as well. And speaking of resources, we have created a folder. This is the address of that folder, tinyurl.com/UUsafety. And we encourage you to go to that folder. Many of the documents that we discussed today will be available there for you. We hope that you are able to find something that you can amend for your own purposes or possibly just simply adopt wholesale. Some of the policies there may address some of the issues that your congregation is facing as well and might help you chart the path for a safer congregation and a more cohesive safety team. Why is safety a priority for us and for UUs in general? Well, we know full well, and we can see it all around us, that there is rising national polarization. And for us in Huntington, we had seen some local incidents that kind of raised alarm bells for us. We had seen an uptick in car theft. We have a Progress Pride flag outside of our worship space, and that flag has been stolen many, many times. Long Island has also had a host of MAGA rallies where it's trucks and cars and motorcycles driving up and down the highways. And these things started to make us nervous, especially as we were hosting events for Pride. Obviously, our flag out front, hosting things like a drag queen story hour. We saw in the news that these were drawing some unfortunately negative attention in our area. And that for us indicated that we needed to really prioritize our safety. We also continually have to strike this balance between our openness and our vigilance. And that's going to be a theme today. And I think it's a real theme for any congregation that is looking to improve its safety procedures. That question of how do we make sure everyone feels safe and is in fact safe while also welcoming newcomers and maintaining openness. We don't want coming into worship to feel somehow like you're going through TSA. So that's constantly something and of a balance that we're trying to negotiate there. So throughout this presentation, you'll see slides like this that invite you to pause and to reflect. If you're watching this alone, as a member of a safety team or someone who is going to be establishing a safety team, this is a great opportunity to take some notes. If you happen to be with some other folks who are working on safety issues in your congregation, this could be a great place to stop and use these questions to generate some conversation. So to start with, we ask you to pause and reflect here on this question. What national and local issues might affect safety for your congregation? And what are some things that might be particular to your needs? Keeping in mind that safety is not only folks coming to interrupt, but could also be things like elevated risks of flood, fires, tornadoes, things like that. So pause here to reflect on what issues are particular to your congregation. Here are some things that are common to most or all UU congregations, um, unique challenges that UUs face as it pertains to safety. Obviously, our public commitment to justice increases our visibility, increases our risk. As our congregations are speaking out about topics like immigration, gender justice, things like that, we are drawing attention, sometimes from some volatile groups and some volatile people. So we know that that inherently increases our risk of someone either coming to do harm or simply to disrupt our proceedings. Again, that radical welcoming culture makes it kind of difficult to then say, we also might need to inspect bags, or we also might need to put limits on the types of animals that folks can bring into the congregation. And listen, we're proud of that culture of welcome, and we wouldn't want it any other way. But we also have to be realistic with one another about what that means in the current state of affairs as it pertains to the safety of all of our congregants. Our congregations are small, our missions are big. We do not have, in most cases, the same numbers of congregants on a weekly basis, certainly, as maybe some other denominations. So that makes it hard sometimes to staff a safety team. We're going to be talking today. Our safety team consists of about 10 members, and yours might be bigger or smaller. And, as we look at some of our approaches, you might adapt them accordingly. But having a small congregation with a big visible mission is challenging. We know also that safety is an emotional and spiritual thing. We want our folks to actually be physically safe, but we also want to reassure them and afford them the feeling of safety. And it's hard, as we said earlier, to balance the safety work with the love and covenant that we want to continue in our congregations and not steer into a sense of fear. For our safety team, we want to start by discussing the vision and structure. So we wanted our safety team to be proactive, and we wanted it to be inclusive. And proactive meaning we didn't want to just have plans for when something bad happened. We wanted to have plans to prevent bad things from happening. And inclusive in the sense that we wanted folks of differing abilities. We wanted people who were teaching religious education classes, people who were worship associates, people who were greeters, to identify and then also think about how we might address different gaps perhaps in our safety procedures. So as you can see here, our team included parents, board members, our greeters. We really started working on our safety mission coming out of COVID. So we were lucky to have healthcare professionals as members of our fellowship who could advise us on COVID-related protocols. Critical to our safety team is our community partnerships, including FEMA, our local county police department, our district attorney's office, and again, healthcare experts in local hospitals and health clinics that were willing to partner with us. A note on this, and we'll speak more about FEMA later. Unfortunately, some of the work that FEMA was doing with congregations, particularly around safety, has been curtailed by recent cuts to federal staffing. So we did have a very fruitful partnership with a FEMA agent who actually would come to our congregation and help us assess our safety and make plans and even workshop some plans. But it is the case that partnership no longer exists, and you may find that that is not the resource that it once was. And our layered approach includes policies, which again are proactive, people and training people, and practice, putting this into practice, refining it, and making sure that everyone who needs to be part of a safety response is fully informed and ready to execute. So here we invite you again to pause and reflect. Who needs to be on your safety team? And think too about what organizations might be able to support your safety mission and your efforts in your local community. And now an important caveat, and Michael, who will present later, is an attorney by trade, so it was very important to him that we have this here. We are not offering legal advice in this presentation, nor should you consider any of the information here that we are presenting definitive in any way. We would hate for you to, find that you ran afoul of some local legislation and then turn around and say, well, Bryce and Michael told me it was okay. That is not what we're trying to present here by any means. Rather, we want to present some of our own experiences in the hopes that you might be able to think about what fits your congregation best. Though we do think that some of the approaches that we have taken are easily replicable and will be effective in other congregations as well. The next portion of this presentation is going to go through some key initiatives that we undertook, which your congregation may also be interested in pursuing. So the first is about our infrastructure and our equipment. We made sure that we had an AED device in our prayer space or our worship space, as well as Narcan. Now, AED machines are a little bit complicated to get, not terribly. Narcan is very easy to get. Most hospitals or police stations will give you Narcan and even train you on how to use Narcan. It is quite simple. But we wanted to have these, and we made sure they were in the places where we might be most likely to encounter medical emergencies, which is our main hall where we meet as a congregation. We also listed our AED on an app called PulsePoint. PulsePoint is a public app, an open crowdsourced app, where anyone with an AED machine can list the location of that machine so that if anyone ever were having an emergency, they could open the app and find the nearest AED machine. We also ordered Stop the Bleed kits. These would be for major emergencies, and we updated our first aid stations. When we did an assessment of our existing resources, we found that some of our first aid kits were 30, 40 years old. Some of the Band-Aids had kind of dried out and were no longer adhesive. So check out your first aid kits. That's an easy thing to replace, and should be probably first on your list. We also had to go through our entire space, and as I mentioned, we are located in kind of an old castle here. So it was important that we checked that all of our doors locked in case we ever needed to shelter in place or lock down. So we did replace several door locks to make sure that all doors could be locked from the inside in case of emergency. And critically, we invested in radios, which have kind of those fancy headpieces that make us feel like we're in the Secret Service. Um, and we made sure that our safety team has those, but also that our greeters at the front have them, and also that our religious education teachers have them, so that at any given moment, we could send out a message to everybody and have that fluid communication in case we needed to communicate some sort of an emergency. This is a picture of our safety station, just to give you a look on the inside there. You can see our radios there on the bottom right. Attached to those little red baggies are disposable CPR masks, just in case we ever needed to administer CPR. Many of our safety team members are trained in first aid and CPR. The headsets are there individualized in their baggies for everyone. You'll see the Stop the Bleed kits are those cellophane wrapped kits to the left of the radios, and you'll see two clipboards. And I'll talk about the assignments for the safety stations in a minute. But those are the clipboards that our safety team uses. You can see under the left clipboard, by the way, those blue name tags. In our fellowship, everyone has a name tag at all times, but the safety team, when they are on duty, has a blue name tag so that a member of the congregation could identify them as being on duty for safety. One, to reassure them that there are folks looking out for the safety of the congregation, but also in case they ever needed to contact somebody for assistance. Policy and planning. So we developed a pretty thorough lockdown protocol, which is in that folder. A lockdown protocol would be for really your worst case scenario of someone coming to the fellowship to do harm. We developed that, we tested it, never with the whole congregation, but we did have a test, so to say, with our safety team, our greeters, our worship associates, and our religious education teachers, so that everyone understood their responsibilities in the unlikely eventuality of a full lockdown. We made some policy updates about bringing animals into the sanctuary as well as large bags. And we did have to recently adopt a policy for immigration enforcement, which we will show you in a bit. We developed these discrete protocol cards for our safety team. Small, like 2 inch by 4 inch cards that could actually be stored in their ID pouches, so that if they ever did need to respond to, for instance, an ICE agent, rather than have to recall a lengthy plan or a lengthy policy, they had kind of a cheat sheet ready for them. So if you're developing policies like that or lockdown policies, it may help to have those kind of on the go cards so that your safety team can respond in the moment without too much thought. Here's the lockdown protocol I mentioned. I won't read through this whole thing by any means, but you're welcome to do so. As I said, it is linked in that folder. So this is a place where we are saying here we're not offering legal advice or any definitive information. However, this lockdown procedure was developed in concert with a number of folks who work in public education, schools that have similar plans. We did have our Suffolk County Police come in to look at this plan and help us understand if it was appropriate. Our FEMA partners looked at this plan. So this plan we do feel is very appropriate for our congregation. So as you take a look at it, you might use this as a starting point if you would like to build a lockdown protocol. This might give you a template that you would then obviously need to amend for your own congregation. A key point to this, which some folks don't understand, and which needs some explanation, is that we were advised by our police department and by national security advisor who was part of that visit that you never open the door if someone tells you that they're police. So if you ever do have to go into a real lockdown, you would never open the door just because someone said it's the police, we're here to rescue you, because of course that could be someone looking to do harm who is imitating a police officer. Instead, what they assured us is they said, listen, if there ever is a real lockdown, it's not going to be pretty, but if we need to get in, the door is going to come down, and everyone just needs to make sure they put their hands up. I know that's a scary thing to hear. I know it's not in keeping with what I'm sure is an otherwise very peaceful and positive General Assembly, but realistically, that is how a lockdown ends if it is happening in reality. So it's just an important thing that we learned from our partners that we wanted to pass on. We also created some public-facing policy documents. This is where we really start to feel the tension between the welcoming environment and safety. But we did, in concert with our board, create a paper like this, which hangs toward the front of our building, so that hopefully, if there ever were a contentious situation where someone was bringing in a large bag or bringing in a weapon or something like that, that we could quickly alert them to the existing policies so that it didn't become an interpersonal argument or something like that. So, we are aware that this does not set the tone that we might love to set, but we did feel like it was an important thing to add to our entranceway to mitigate any contentious situations with folks bringing in items that were prohibited. I talked earlier about that cheat sheet, that protocol card. This is the one that is about interacting with ICE agents, and I'll show you the full document a little bit later in the slideshow. But this is what we made for our team, and it's worth looking over right now because this is an issue that probably most congregations are considering. So the protocol that we've been advised to follow is to ask officers to remain outside, request a judicial warrant, respond with, "I'm not authorized to accept this document at this time. We're going to have to ask you to leave." At the same time, we would also consult with some attorneys that we've made relationships with. We would document every available piece of information. And a critical piece here is we would always work in tandem here so that one person could film the interaction while the other follows steps 1 through 4. Some other key initiatives, which I would suggest any congregation take up, these are pretty simple ones and relatively inexpensive. Procuring training for CPR, first aid, and Narcan for volunteers. We ended up defraying the cost of this by charging folks who are not on the safety team something like $20 for first aid and CPR training. It covered the cost, and our safety team members we trained for free. We had great success and really benefited from tabletop safety exercises. We did these in concert with FEMA, but you can certainly do these yourself. And a tabletop exercise is quite simple. All it involves is imagining. You probably have one person who's a facilitator who describes an emergency situation, and then everyone sitting around the table starts to describe how they would react in that moment. So you might say, someone, has a cardiac event in the main hall. What happens? Or a child breaks their leg playing on the playground during RE. Who does what? And what you'll see very quickly is either your team has a really good process in place for who's responsible for which part of the plan, or you'll see that your plan isn't quite as watertight as you thought. And that's good learning too. And then you can revise your plan accordingly. We engaged in 2 workshops, the Power of Hello and Stop the Bleed workshops, which we found to be very beneficial. Those, again, were offered through FEMA, so you may have a little more difficulty connecting with those at this time. And as I mentioned earlier, we did our lockdown drills and we had debriefs with our team to see during the lockdown what worked, what didn't work, where our blind spots still remain.
My name is Michael Goldsmith, and I'll be taking you through the second half of our presentation. Just by way of introduction, I am a member of the security team, and I also helped draft our safe congregation policies. I'm also, in my spare time, a martial arts instructor. So we're going to talk about how to be vigilant through the power of hello. When I teach a self-defense class, I always tell the people to think about the 4 A's: to be alert, to be aware, to show some attitude, and to avoid the situation. Basically, to be alert means to pay attention, keep your head on a swivel, see what's going on and be alert. The second thing is to be aware. Know your surroundings, know where you are, know where the exits are, know who's coming in and out. And if there's something that you think might be somewhat suspicious, trust your gut. It may very well be true. So at that point, if you're on a security team, you have to investigate. Your attitude is the third A. You should be calm and confident. You don't have to be confrontational, but you should basically be calm and confident, that so the other person knows that that you recognize them and you're going to be dealing with them in a calm and respectful manner. And the last thing is to avoid a problem. That's the fourth thing. You have to remember you're on a team, so you could always get help. It depends on the situation, but you're not alone. In the powerful low, you're observing some body or something that you think potentially could be potentially a problem. Um, then you confidently, with your confident, calm demeanor, walk up to them and say, "Hello, how are you? Are you new to the congregation?" Um, Act as a greeter. Then you navigate the risk. Basically, what that means is that you have to determine whether or not this person really could potentially be presenting a problem. And then you have to use your judgment to get help or to extricate yourself and that individual from causing any potential problems. And you have to remember, if you are part of a security team or a safety team, at that point, you will have backup. Remember that when you're on a safety or security team, you're not a bouncer. You're not there to forcibly eject people or fight people. What you really want to do is de escalate. Sometimes people are just having a bad day. Sometimes it could be a mental health issue. So, what you want to do is you want to de escalate. As somebody who's been studying judo for a very long time, the philosophy of judo is that softness beats hardness. Judo literally means the gentle or yielding way. So you want to be flexible. You want to be able to adapt. You want to be able to redirect energy. Um, Sometimes you want to take the person off balance by changing the subject. So what you want to do is, again, you want to be calm. You want to have open body language, speak with a soft tone. You want to use friendly engagement using the powerful O. You want to be clear and respectful, but you also want to set boundaries. You want to take a non-threatening posture. Um, and if that doesn't work, at that point it escalates. You might have to, call for some backup, and there'll be other people around, and they might have to contact the authorities. But quite often, you might be able to de-escalate. One of the ways to de-escalate is to be actively listening. Sometimes people are just angry, or they're having issues, or they're just having a bad day, like I said before. So you listen to them. You see what their concerns are. Demonstrate understanding for their concerns. One of the ways that you could do that is to say, "I really want to help you. What is your problem? Let's talk about it." Um, you don't want to have a tense body posture. You want to keep a certain distance. Um, as a martial artist, we have whole lots of things we talk about maintaining distance and all that. But you're not looking to fight anybody, so you want to keep, a certain distance so you don't be threatening. Focus on the person's feelings. If the person is angry, even if it's an irrational, in your opinion, feeling of their anger, you want to be respectful of their feelings. Make the person feel validated, and again, redirect their energy. My mom has been a school teacher, and I didn't realize, but she was using these techniques on me ever since I was a kid. What she would do is she would redirect, and she would just change the subject. And that's a judo technique also. It's called off balancing. So if they're wearing some sort of shirt or a t-shirt or a bag or something, you could say, "Oh, I like that bag." Or if they're wearing like a sports jersey, you could say, "Oh, man, those are one of those. That's one of my favorite teams. Did you see the game last week?" Something like that. Engage them, and that will off balance it. And that also helps you diffuse the situation. On the nature of your congregations, you may or may not have this as something that you need to be concerned with, but I think it merits discussion. If you have to have any interaction with any ICE agents, the bottom line is just remember trucking from the Grateful Dead. But if you got a warrant, I guess you're going to come in. However, you have to make sure the warrant is valid. They need an actual warrant. And on the next slide, we'll talk about what is actually supposed to be in a warrant. You have to verify that all their papers are in order. You limit your interactions. Don't volunteer any information. Be polite, be respectful. But there are certain legal requirements that they're going to have to meet. Um, yeah, and at the bottom line, you have to uphold the values of compassion, dignity, and justice. We don't want anybody to get in trouble, particularly the people that are at the front door or the ones that are confronting the ICE agents. but you are allowed to look at their papers to see if they're valid or not. This slide shows what our policy is at our congregation. Basically, it says the same things that I said in the previous slide, but also keep in mind that you do have the right to ask somebody to leave your property if they are not there properly. So again, you have to know what your rights are, you have to know what your obligations are, and at that point, you have to make a decision as to whether the warrant is valid, and then you just have to step aside and let them do their search. Or if their warrant is not valid, and at that point, you could ask them to leave the premises. This slide shows what our policy is at our congregation. Basically, it says the same things that I said in the previous slide, but also keep in mind that you do have the right to ask somebody to leave your property if they are not there properly. So again, you have to know what your rights are, you have to know what your obligations are, and at that point, you have to make a decision as to whether the warrant is valid, and then you just have to step aside and let them do their search. Or if their warrant is not valid, and at that point, you could ask them to leave the premises. I just gave you a lot of heavy duty information about some very serious topics, but now we could take a breath, a cleansing breath, and then we could exhale, and now we could reflect. So what you have to do if you want to have a truly safe congregation is you have to make sure that everything is up to date. You have to check the status of our first aid and safety supplies. For example, when we started doing and enacting our safety policies, we found out that some of our medical supplies had expired. So we made sure that we bought new things. Also, you have to determine whether or not you have a policy to support congregational safety, and whether or not you have concrete plans in place for possible emergencies. Emergencies could be a medical emergency, it could be a mental health issue, it could be a disruptive member, it could be a natural disaster, and feel free to take and borrow anything that we have that we've attached to this with respect to our safety policies. It's not perfect. We're still evolving it. We're still refining it. But I think it's a pretty good structure, and it's pretty comprehensive as to what we want to accomplish. And you could look at it, refine it, and modify it in any way you think meets the needs of your congregation. Slide number 23. It's very important to partnership and engage with the community. What we did was we reached out to FEMA and our local police precinct, and the feedback was very, very positive. They both came down, the police came down, they sat with us, they assessed what our security needs would be, the FEMA people did too, and we learned some very, very useful and valuable information from them. And in turn, they were impressed by what we accomplished on our own. We have a tenant on our property, so we spoke to the tenant. The tenant will keep their eyes peeled in case they suspect anything going on in the parking lot or on the grounds when there's nobody there. We also participate in countywide preparedness networks. So, it's kind of like the old parable, like if you have 1 arrow, you can snap it in half, but you have like 10 or 15 arrows, you can't break them. So the more people you have supporting you, and the more people you have in your community engagement, the stronger you'll be. Here's some good news. There are funds available to help you with your security policies. There are grants out there on the state and or federal level, although I suspect that the federal fundings are probably drying up right now for you to apply for grants to improve your infrastructure and or obtain equipment. There may be grants available out there for you to get ring cameras or walkie-talkies or fix your doors, um, fix some of the other things that you need repair that are related to security. So you have to make a strategic wish list, think of what it is that you need for your safety goals, and then you have to look into see what grants are available and then apply for the grants before the deadlines, obviously. And then hopefully you'll have a little bit of assistance to make your congregation more secure. This is very important. You need to communicate with your congregation and build a culture within your congregation to support your security team. We are very much supported by our minister, by the congregation, by the board. We've spoken up at services. We do Q&A after services. We conduct basically training for people after services as to what to do. The greeters, the religious education teachers, they're all supportive of what we do. There are many times that people come up to me and see that I'm watching the front door, and they're very thankful. They're very gracious. They appreciate what we're doing, and we're doing it basically because we want everybody to be safe and to come to an open and friendly and welcoming place. So just make sure that you communicate and you blend into the fabric of your congregation. All right, time for another deep cleansing breath. All right, we can exhale. So let's think about what you would want to put on your safety wish list. Do you need to work on your infrastructure? Do you need to figure out how to actually recruit a safety team? Do you have to draft up safety policies and have the board enact them? Do you have to improve your infrastructure? Do you want to have people receive training on how to use medical devices or deal with a health situation? Do you need to prepare for natural disaster or some sort of disruptive intruder or member? And then you have to draft up a policy to deal with those things. And then you have to get the engagement of the congregation, and then you have to get people to serve on the security team so you could maintain your safety in your congregation.
So as we come to the close of our presentation, we're going to reflect on some lessons that we've learned over our time working on congregational safety and with our safety team. So we learned that we will face delays, we will face obstacles, and it will take persistence and adaptability as we learn sometimes that some of our measures may actually make our congregation feel less psychologically uncomfortable, even as it's becoming more physically safe. We know that small changes can make a big difference, and that's encouraging. If you're just starting this work, doing something small like moving your first aid kit or updating your first aid kit might be a nice first step that will reverberate as you continue to make adjustments to your safety procedures. Clear, simple tools, help in moments of stress. We have those cheat sheets. We find that those are relatively essential. And bear in mind that safety is a number of components, physical, emotional, spiritual, and also can include accessibility needs as well. So for our congregation, looking ahead, we are still working to finalize and refine our protocols. Those are always a work in progress. So those are things that we're continuing to look at. We want to extend our training capacity and our community education so that we are offering training to our safety team and also our congregants. We want to continue building interfaith and civic partnerships. We found that those have been some of the best things, some of the best work that we've done has been partnering up with other organizations, learning from them, having them help us do self-assessments. And so we hope to continue that work, even as unfortunately we recognize that on the national stage, some of those organizations have less and less resources. And finally, we still are going to have a full congregation safety session. We've done them in small chunks, but we are hoping to have something a little more comprehensive where we explain all of our policies to the entire congregation. Throughout all this, our struggle has been, and you'll probably feel the same struggle, centering our values and making sure that even as we have improvements to our safety, we are also making sure that we are always being inclusive, compassionate, and keeping our community in mind because we don't want our congregation to feel, as I said earlier, like entering through TSA or to feel somehow like people are being watched or policed at all times. It's always going to be a struggle to balance the welcoming nature of a UU congregation with the imperative for safety, but we remain mindful of that and we keep that at the forefront of our thinking. And of course, we also, as UUs, everyone has a job and everyone needs to pitch in to help the congregation run smoothly. And so it is with the safety team. And we continue to recruit and invite new members in because the truth is that we need all hands on deck to make this work possible. So, in our final pause to reflect, what's next for your congregation? Are you a congregation that's about to start their safety work for the first time? And if so, what from today may be the first steps for you? Are you a congregation that has a tried and true safety team? And if you learned something new today or got some new ideas today, are there things that you might bring back to your congregation? So we invite you to pause and reflect on that question. And lastly, we want to thank you for taking the time to be with us here today virtually. Again, we hope you have a wonderful time at the General Assembly. We hope that the resources that we shared are useful to you. And if you have any questions, this is my email address. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you want to learn more about resources, schedule a phone call just to hear some, about anything in more detail. But thank you again for being here with us today. And we hope that you learned something and are able to bring something back to make your congregation safer and more secure. Thank you.